All right. We are on for another episode. This is episode 10. This is a big number.
Double figures.
Double
Hitting
figures.
double figures already.
I know.
Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
Exactly. This has been the 10th week, apparently.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So this is gonna be interesting. But
Definitely.
we made it this far. We made it to 10, the 10th episode.
Yeah.
Today we've got a very interesting fella. I can't wait to get and unpack his story. This is going to be very, very, very cool. I can't wait myself. I don't know anything about South Africa because this is where this man is from. But we got JD today. So JD's from South Africa. He was there and moved to Melbourne, Australia when he was 18.
Yeah, 2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go, 12 years ago.
Yeah. Beginning of 2011,
Yeah.
I arrived over here. Finished off school 2010, end of 2010.
There you go.
After the World Cup, we had a good year in South
No,
Africa.
that's amazing.
Very good year.
I want to get into that as well. I
Yeah.
can't wait to get into that. So, what we are going to talk about today is
Yeah.
what life is like in South Africa, and what life was like when you got here from South Africa. And you went back, I think, a couple times, or
Yeah, I went back in 2016, and then
Yeah.
I came back 2018, so I spent
Yeah.
about 2 years back home.
yeah. So, I love
That period of going back compared to when I was growing up, a very different,
Yeah,
different
okay.
scale, you know. But
Yeah.
we'll touch up on that.
I can't wait to touch up on
Yeah,
that as
yeah.
well. But before we start, and before we get into these amazing, interesting conversations, I want you to take us back to what it was like when you in South Africa, where you were born, and how that was.
Yeah, I was born in 92, 15 July 92. It was different back then because of the fact that, we went into democracy, which was obviously a positive thing. And then
Yeah.
between 1990 and 1993 was that testing period. And then growing up, obviously, in my sort of era or generation, when we hit 7 years old, we'd go into grade 1. So that would have been 1999. And that was good. It was very eye-opening because of the fact that, there was a lot of opportunity for us to move into different areas. So that meant that, venturing out into schools that our parents obviously weren't able to go to back in the days.
And what was the reason?
Because of the apartheid,
Yeah.
So it didn't allow you to go in. But, if we look at the positive side, because that's all I really could see as a youngster growing up. And fortunately, we were surrounded by a lot of positive influences. So my mother, for example, single mother. Unfortunately, my parents got divorced when I was 2, but she sacrificed a lot and she was very educated herself. So she'd always push me to prosper in life.
Yeah.
So she sent me to school. I went to Northlands Primary, and that was good because, as a youngster, mixing and mingling with people from all diversities, it enabled you to realize, that this is a new South Africa. This is a chance for opportunity.
Yeah.
But we had to realize that everything had to go into slow paces, into structure. So between 7 years old and 13, it was very eye-opening. But being able to play sport, doing the things our parents weren't able to do when they were growing up, it was wow, this is a step in the future or a step for progress for the family in general,
Yeah.
So it was very good. So at least my mother was happy about it, and I got a chance. I got the opportunity.
That's amazing. And at that time, you were one of the first generations to go to schools where it was
Very much so.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how was that being and having that opportunity?
For our parents and stuff like that, it would be stepping out of your comfort zone, that sense of that fear factor. But then for us as youngsters, as kids, we don't really see all the negative sides.
Yeah.
We just be embracing everything that would be put in front of us. So for me to mix and mingle with a lot of friends, and I've kept in touch with a lot of my friends I went to primary school with, not really high school, but more primary school, because that was the foundation period that set our mentality on what we want to sort of achieve at a later stage.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the building phases of a human being, when it starts off from a child going into the adolescent and the adult age group, the foundation, if it's put into place in a good structured way, it will enable you to realize, you can create a filter for yourself, and I'll touch up on that at a later stage. But you start to see the right from wrong, wrong from right, however you want to say it. And then you start to see that there is opportunities, but it won't be spoon-fed to you. So South Africa was rough. It was really rough, but there was resources available. So it's what you make of it.
Yeah.
And that's what, I took up during my primary school era and then into high school. And into high school, obviously, like it was very testing because I went to a predominantly boys' school and then I went to girls and boys' school at a later stage. But I think like
But when you said predominantly boy school, because I went to an all boys school, that was just all boys school, and then
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had a sister school next door.
yeah, we
what
had
does-
something like that.
Okay, so
yeah.
it was like a sister boy brother school, but you went to it was a boys school,
Boys
but
school,
it had
yeah. So we had like Northwood, Northlands.
Yeah.
So it was like a feeder school. You
Yeah,
know?
okay.
And then we also had schools where I went to an Afrikaans school. So like a Dutch speaking school. You know?
Okay.
So like there was different phases that I was introduced to. But starting off at Northlands Primary definitely was a foundation phase to open my eyes and see, you know what, there's resources available, but it's not going to be easy. Like
So-
it's going to be harder and harder as you grow older because like the economy just didn't feed the opportunity for a child to progress. So like you can go to school, but doesn't mean that when you finish school, there'll be opportunities. And that is why at a later stage, I chose to say, you know what, I have to venture out into another country and test the water, see what it's like over there. Because South Africa will give you X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
but they won't spoon feed it to you. And that's what made it hard for a lot of people. A lot of people will go to school and have these opportunities. And we have some of the best primary and high school setups if you go to a private school especially. But then after that, it's just the way things are structured nowadays that just makes it very hard to progress and to make something of yourself.
with the way it's structured and how it's hard for some people, for the people that are lucky enough to be in a better position, what are the opportunities for them?
In what sense?
So for an example, you said, you know, going to primary school and it's not structured for everyone. Is that what you said?
It would be structured in a way that everyone can progress, but then afterwards, what happens after primary and high school, you know? Like a lot of the times, there's a term called former Model C school, right? So like during the apartheid, a lot of these schools were structured and it had a lot of funding and there was a very good level of education.
Yeah.
And there still is, right? Certain people will say it deteriorated. Okay, that's all well and good. Respect to those that still stood.
Yeah.
But the school, especially in those days growing up, there was good education. So like a lot of people will send their kids to good schooling systems, but afterwards there's just wasn't any resources available for the youngsters that would finish school. You know, like the economy, it went backwards. So while we had this freedom in South Africa, our economy went backwards. So you could say a level of corruption, the government, etc., etc. But all well and good. It's just that, you know, like there was no feeder system for us after we finished high school. You know, people would go and spend so much money, especially trying to work towards getting bachelors and etc., and then going into the tertiary education system. But then when they finish and they graduate, and I think a lot of people that would watch this episode or would speak to fellow South Africans, they'll tell you that our education system can be good, you know. But then what happens afterwards is just no job opportunities because
Yeah.
it that's where the cliffhanger is.
Yeah.
It stops there.
What were you aspiring to be when you were in primary school or high school?
I really like sport, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
but you know, like my mother is coming from an educated background. My mother's a professor in public management, so for her, academics was prime. And you know, like as a single mother, she would obviously have that fear factor and say, you know what, I need my one and only child. I'm the only child.
Yeah.
Excuse me, to progress. So she'd want me to maybe venture into something that's more meaningful, that's justified, that has a level of stability. And I think in her eyes, sports or sports management or sports science, you know, didn't really tick the boxes for her.
Yeah.
So when I, you know, at a later stage, especially when I was into high school, I realized that, you know what, I can make certain grades. And I had to realize that I was more of a people's person. Very much so. So as much as I like sports.
Same here.
Yeah, there
Well, I
we
believe
go.
so.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly. Well, that's where we clicked the
Yeah.
first time we met.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Um,
but when I looked at myself, and especially like in year 10, 11, or we call it grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, so
Yeah.
it's like 16, 17, 18 years old.
Hang on. So you call it grade 10, 11. We
Yeah.
call it. Well, I call it grade 10. We call it grade 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you get to high school, it's year 6 years.
Australia's high school starts in
Year 7.
year 7.
Yeah.
Ours starts in year 8.
Does it?
Yeah.
And because see how you said year 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't say year 3 or year 2. Oh, I don't. I say grade 1, 2, 3,
And
4, 5, 6.
we say grade all the way to grade 12.
Okay.
Our
I could be
grade
wrong.
12 is called
Yeah.
matric.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I could
what's
be
the-
completely wrong.
You know what's the
Because
other
I called it grade. I don't even know what I call it. Year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, year
Yes,
12.
yeah.
But in primary school, I called it grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 because it just sounded wrong to say year 1.
yeah.
Maybe it was just me. I could be wrong. I'm assuming it's just me.
Yeah. In the 90s, even before that, you'd call it standard. So standard 10, you plus 2 years, and that will get you standard grade 12. So standard 8
right.
is grade 10. You know, like you're going
Yeah,
plus
that's
2s.
confusing.
That was very confusing. But that's like the old sort of establishment, you know,
Yeah.
that would have it like that. But, going back to what we said, it's like, South Africa is lovely. South Africa will continue to be lovely. The foundation periods were there for a lot of us and still is. But I think it's when you get to that mature level, the adulthood, where if you are logical about your approach to life and you want to reach a certain level of quality in life, you'll start to see that maybe South Africa doesn't give you so much so soon. You'd either have to have a bit of hand-me-downs or a bit of investments that's being provided towards you, or you are willing to wait a lengthy period. I'm talking like maybe 10 years. Because, like in this day and age, you can't just be waiting for someone to give you something, And you're going to have to, like what I said to you earlier on, you're going to have to hit the ball rolling as soon as you leave your door.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issues, and it comes down to the way the media and the government portrays South Africa and the influence. The media plays a pivotal role in our perception of what we should be living day and day in South Africa. And I'm quite sure that's the same for a lot of countries.
Give us an example of what they're doing in South Africa specifically.
So for example, and I'll be quite honest with you, like if you're staying in in an affluent area or an area where there is a lot of growth or financial stability, if you apply for a certain job in the CBD, we don't really have a CBD. It's called town, but because of crime, etc., it's scattered everywhere around the city. So if you apply for a certain job in a certain area, they'll look at your skin color, yes, and a bit of tribalism, etc., from back in the days, that old school mentality. But they also look at the area that you are from, and they'll start to see that, you know what, this guy is actually living in a plush area. That guy is not. Let me give the job to him rather than him. So it's a bit of stereotypical behavior going on, which is a bit unfair because you live in a certain area that's kind of good, it means that your folks probably worked hard. Doesn't mean that you're there as well.
Yeah.
You're starting something for yourself. You want to prove yourself, but you get overlooked. And then
that feels like it's a cycle of crap now because that's how it's going to be.
But
we're always going to live here because we're never going to get the opportunity to try get out of here in the first place.
Correct. So when they put that pressure on people to find work, right? But you're not from an educated area, right? They'll give you the job, and you'll get first hand over someone that maybe came from someone that's somewhere that's more affluent, but and that's what causes that distance. So people that would come from decent areas, etc., and they start to see that, Durban's not giving me any job opportunities. Let me move to Johannesburg or Cape Town. That's where that separation's caused. So it's just that opportunity. It's everything. It's like a melting pot. It's the way.
Where exactly is the melting pot?
The melting pot can be in every city, but it just depends on which sector you want to get into, which industry. If you're a businessman and stuff like that, all well and good. There'll be a certain curveballs that's thrown your way, but you'll still be able to make a life for yourself. If it was your own run business.
Yeah.
Nothing's easy though. But if you're getting into an area where it's diverse and there's everyone in there, it can be hard for you. It can be.
You said before that you enjoyed sports and then you realized that you're a people's person.
Yeah.
When you were there before you decided to come here and were more exposed to how it actually is and how unfair it is or could be up in South Africa, what were you hoping to do once you graduate? What were you wanting to do other than sports with people or...
Well, I realized that, 16, 17 years old, I want to get into something that's going to be me offering or giving something back to the community. So I got my hands involved in like a bit of like that counseling background. Like I really wanted to educate myself. Obviously, I was still in school, so I couldn't really go the full extension. But when I matriculated or finished year 12, that's our term that we use.
Yeah.
No, I spoke to mom and said, you know what, I have this plan of action. And fortunately, we were in a position where she was able to afford to send me overseas. And I told her, you know what, I want to get involved in like music production. I want to get involved in counseling. I want to do a bit of music therapy. I want to get involved in the entertainment scene, do a bit of drug and alcohol counseling for musicians that's struggling with depression, suicide.
Can I ask a random question? Because you didn't say anything about music until now.
Mm.
Is the music part from the Africanness in you?
100%. I think it's for everyone back home.
Yeah.
You know that whole tribal house, deep house.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to a lot of drum and bass.
Okay.
So like jungle music, like
yeah.
liquid drum and bass, etc. So a lot of the boys that were skating, you know, and stuff like that, we'd all listen to a bit of that music, Dillinger, a lot of that old school DJ Markey, etc. So all of that influence got me into it. But you know, I'll be honest with you, Paul.
Sorry, before we change the topic, I'm so sorry. I won't continue doing this. But this is just something I really need to know. In South Africa, you're talking about music. I watched a documentary called Finding Sugar Man.
Have
you heard of that?
Yeah, I heard of it.
So
I don't know him that much, but I know about that.
But were you around when his music was massive there?
Massive, definitely.
And
So I think he was mostly in Cape Town. I think it was.
Was he?
Yeah.
I just want to know. That's I you know, most of the times I just go down spirals of random questions, but that's something I wanted to know.
That one song that Sugar, you know,
what song was that?
That's Sugar Man.
Yeah.
You know, it will
what
never
about
die.
Apparently, that song I Wonder was massive for you guys as well because like
I don't know it
that
fully.
I wonder.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. I think I know that tune, but definitely the other track will never die on the radio.
Yeah.
Like it will continue to play non-stop forever.
Yeah.
It's like an anthem, probably.
Yeah, because I think the reason when I was watching the documentary, it said that when that came down to South Africa, they were like, "What? This is what's happening in wherever they were," because he thought that he was like a Beatles type person in the States. He thought it was massive, and they were like, "Oh, what?" They were talking about, you know, sex and freedom and all that, and because it wasn't like that. Apparently, I'm not sure. So I think that's probably why it was massive. Is that the reason why?
I don't know it fully, but I definitely know of him and that one particular song that I made mention of. Yeah, definitely. But you see, all these small things like music, it brings people together. And that's what I was like touching on, like in terms of when I was growing up and finishing high school, like just listening to music. And I had a lot of friends that came from different backgrounds, you know, like different, you know, they'd experienced different things in life. But the music was the one thing. Okay, you can say food. Yeah, for sure. Food's for everyone. But when I saw the impact that music would have around a lot of us, regardless of the age bracket, like you can see that unity and just the art of sound can manipulate the brainwaves and enhance your mood swings for a positive, from negative to positive. So when you put all those small things together, and I remember I'm the only child, so I had a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
If I'm not watching sport or playing sport at that time, or with friends, etc., listening to music, hanging out in public facilities, I'd be home just wondering what occurred on that same day or the previous day. So I'll just sit and think and try to structure and figure out where am I going in life? What do I want to do? Because time waits for no man. You know, and I was getting to that phase where it's like mom's now putting pressure on me, trying to figure out what does her son want to do when he finishes high school.
And what age was this when you started feeling the pressure?
16, 17. Because I turned 18 mid-year through year 12, and I had to figure out what I want to do. And the reason why I say it's important, because we started the Australian application at the beginning of 2010, before I turned 18.
Yeah.
So I had to have my answers ready. And my mother loves structure.
Yeah.
My mother will never put pressure and stuff like that, but she was very understanding. But she wanted an answer. And it had to come sooner rather than later, you know? So I'd respect that. But it was good that I had that certain level of pressure, because that means I wouldn't really procrastinate, you know? So we started that application, and I chose Australia because South Africa's culture...
Before we get to Australia and you getting here, I really want to kind of talk a little bit more about you saying that you are, you know, a single child, only child, and you know, the curiosity, you know, your curiosity is so interesting, and how you were talking about like when you were by yourself, you had a lot of times to think about what happened yesterday and blah blah blah. Because that is very rare here, and what I mean by rare is the fact that you were able to be alone and enjoy that. So being alone and being on your own, how was that? Did you find that challenging? Did you enjoy being alone?
I think...
and when did that change?
I think the penny dropped, and for me to really appreciate my sort of independency, if that's the right term you want to use, was when my granny passed away. So that would have been when I was 11 years old. So mom's mother, my granny lived with us. So there was the three of us in one house. And so mom was at the gym, etc. That's her second home. She loves the gym, you know. And yeah, my granny, it was a Sunday. I think it was like 2 or 3 days after. I can't remember the actual date, but she passed away in my arms, you know. I was 11 years old. To fill the bathtub for her. She wanted to take a shower, but she was weak, etc. And she passed away. Like she had a heart attack. So I
Did you
was
know what
there.
was happening?
I think when she had false teeth, she wore false teeth, and I think when it fell out, and then she started like struggling for breath, etc. And she asked me to grab the pillow, and then she obviously died a few minutes or seconds, minutes. But it was in that period where I was holding her, and she was obviously dead in my arms for, I'd say, roughly 10, 15 minutes. Because at that age, you can have an idea that the person's gone, but you're not so mature enough to understand what to do next.
So how old were you when this happened?
11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
11.
So it's like, you know, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I might have watched movies and you see someone dying or whatever, but when someone dies in front of you, it's different, you know? Like, your next action, you wouldn't really know what to do.
Yeah.
But eventually I had that sort of gumption in me to, like, rest her aside. It was actually in my mother's bathroom. And then I had her to the side, and I picked up the phone and I called my mother's friends that live nearby, you know, just for like a bit of advice, etc. And they came over, called an ambulance. Mom didn't know about this, and then Mom eventually came home with her friends that picked her up and then brought her home, etc. But so it was that period, and then when my mother came home and I heard her screaming. So when you grow up and you see that affection between the mother and her mother, and then when you see it break down when someone passes away, you start to realize that when that person's gone, you can't bring it back. So now it's about you being independent. So that's how I looked and observed my mother's behavior and her actions in the months to come after. And obviously she was a bit distraught. You know, she's strong, so she could hide her emotions. But this question was based on me and how I sort of enjoyed or realized the importance of being independent, because my granny wasn't there anymore and my mom was working full time. And I had no siblings. I have no siblings. So it was all about me now realizing, you know what, I can't be pampered all the time. You have to grow up. You don't have to be a soldier or a strong man, but you have to start to realize who you are and appreciate what you do and realize your passion. So when you wake up in the morning, there's a purpose to wake up in the morning. And it sounds very mature the way I'm saying it now, but I think as a youngster, when you're thrown in the deep end, you have to swim.
Yeah.
You have to. Because if you don't swim and you start to pull back on certain things that you can possibly accomplish, you start to see it affects the team chemistry around you at the home and everywhere else. So if I didn't really pull up my socks in years to come, it really would affect my mother and my relationship together, because she's working hard trying to provide for me.
Yeah.
And if I'm not pulling my weight, then where are we going to go? You know?
Yeah.
You're going to hit brick walls, to be honest with you. So I think that level of independency and just appreciating your own time as a youngster, it really fell into place. Because I appreciated my time growing up with my granny and stuff like that, but you have to hit the ball, you know? You have to hit the ball and you have to go for six and you just have to prosper. So I think it was a slow burn, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of trying to figure out who I am, you know? And then, but I had sport. I had the little things that I kept close to myself. I'm a massive Arsenal supporter. You know, I watch a lot of soccer, football. And so I kept those little things close to me, and music, you know. It was the small things. The small things make a difference, you know. It's stepping stones in life. Yeah. And then that's where it got me to that 18-year-old phase where I had the sort of, how should I say, I found that courage to take that next step and to convince my mother. I said, you know what, I've made the most I can in South Africa, but it became static. After I finished off high school, I realized, you know what, my passions, South Africa is not going to give to me.
Before we get to that and you making that decision, what do you think helped you get to a conclusion like that, which is such a big thing to do? Was it, you know, the passing of your grandma? Was it just realization that this is not going to be what I want to do and they don't have what I want? Was it, what was it exactly? It
was more a case of just like what I went back to saying is like, no one's gonna really spoon feed you, huh?
Yeah, okay.
You're gonna
Yeah.
like, you know, like as a teenager, I did hit a lot of brick walls, right? And you start to realize that, and this is what I'm gonna touch on later on in terms of what I'm doing career-wise with youngsters these days, is that when you're in that teenage phase, you think you know what you're doing, right? And you'll have a bit of advice from the elders,
Yeah.
but you don't really know. You know? and you start to realize that, you know, you can think you have that camaraderie and that tight friendship group, but 10 years down the line, if they all move on, they're not going to pay your bills for you. You know, they're not going to support you. If you have kids and you need to pay bills, etc., they're not going to be there to go and, you know, dish out money from their pocket and give it to you,
Yeah.
etc. So you start to realize that, you know, if you want things to happen, you got to be secure and confident with yourself first before you can venture out and be secure and comfort with everyone else in the world. That's what molds society.
Yeah.
A strong connection in society is molded from people that are very confident with themselves. Because if you're not confident with yourself, you're just going to feed off others and not bring anything to the table.
How long did you feel like that before you decided to pull the trigger and come to Australia? Was it a year before? Was it?
I'd say 13.
Okay.
From 13 to 18.
Yeah.
But like I said, I had that plan, but I was still wanting to be a rebel. I still wanted to be like this youngster. Okay, mom's not going to send me to a sports academy, etc. So let me try and find other ways to entertain myself.
Yeah.
I know I need to be educated, so I'll do that to impress her, but I still want to impress myself.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like from 13 to 18, it's like, you know what you have to do, you'll do that, but you'll still do other things on the sideline.
Yeah. What type of shenanigans were you guys getting up to at that age? What is a 13-year-old to 18-year-old you doing in order to keep entertained? Because here I'm assuming kids, you know, go out, they're drinking, they're just doing ridiculous things. What were you guys doing? What do people get up to in South Africa around that age as teenagers?
A lot of people will be in that period. A lot of people are getting into the graffiti scene.
Oh, okay.
Like whether you're from Cape Town, Johannesburg, or Durban, it was very massive back then. You know.
Oh, okay.
A lot of the youngsters were also like just getting into like drag racing. That was big. Like even if you were under 18, the car scene is massive.
Oh, right.
The car scene is absolutely massive. So you'll get your hands stuck into that. I used to hang out with a lot of older men because I never had that fatherly figure.
Yeah.
I used to, believe it or not, like I used to hang out at the race course, for example. You know, like I used to just learn from older men that would just be there playing Thani. It's like a card game from Durban. And then they'll be getting their hands mixed with other stuff, and they'll be saying, hey, JD, here's a bit of money. Go place these bets for us. Come back. We'll give you a bit of pocket money, etc. So I found that sort of happiness being a runner for them and just being around grown men dressed nicely, etc. A lot of them used to wear Pringle shirts. They still do.
Yeah.
Pringle is a clothing brand from Scotland. It's a golf brand.
Yeah,
so all of them
right.
would wear that. The Lokshan culture, or like white Converse shoes, Dickies jeans, etc. The old school style trousers.
Yeah.
So I used to see, you know, it's like flashy, it's nice. It's not really something you'd see in the movies.
Yeah.
Different sort of lifestyle. But like, because I had that male older figure and I learned from them, and it's not someone that's going to be my blood or my father to say, sorry, son, that's a no. These men wouldn't say no.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they'll let you on your own device.
Yeah.
But they still liked you and they fancied you. That's why they kept you around. So like all that sort of stuff is what I dabbled in.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have necessarily been your average teenager getting stuck into like drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. I still played sport, but I found my sort of ambition or drive or morale fixing from like hanging out with older men. It didn't, and you know what, it didn't even run me into the law. I didn't really get fixed with like getting arrested, etc. But it was something that maybe your average parent wouldn't want you to be hanging around. Because I mean, you're not going to be a 14, 15-year-old hanging around at the race course with older men, you know?
Yeah.
But it was something that get me going, you know? It taught me that bit of maturity as well, how to shake hands, you know?
Yeah.
How to have a conversation with a man. Because that was old school men. Remember, at that stage, those men would have been in their, like, let's say 30s, 40s, you know?
Yeah, right.
So I found those little niches. Even up till this stage, a lot of my friends in Melbourne, most of the boys are in their 30s, hitting 40s. I'm probably the only one still stuck. I'm 29 years old now, you know?
Yeah.
So I like that. I drive off that because I know, because they're older than me, I can have fun with them. But when shit hits the fan, I can still ask them, hey, you know what? Give me an answer for this. Give me a bit of advice for that, you know, etc.
Yeah.
Little things make a difference.
Man, I love that. It's
Yeah.
so cool to have an insight of what it was like growing up as a teenager in South Africa, what it was like, just learning how to be independent.
It's a cheat mechanism.
Yeah.
If you really look at it, well, I mean, it's not rocket science. Some
Yeah.
people say, wow, that's crazy. That's a nice way. But if you really think about it, if you knew that you didn't really have siblings or a male figure and you wanted to tick the boxes at a fast rate, you'd normally want to go and hang out with someone that's experienced.